welcome to the NTT IndyCar Series. We are at Portland International Raceway for what is going to be a very exciting day of action. Free practice 2 is just coming up now. We'll be on the commentary team with myself, Adam, Josh T, Jess and Omi later on in qualifying. But coming up now is the hour-long practice 2, and your commentators come from the IndyCar Radio Network. So let's hand over to them now as the green light goes on and practice 2 gets underway.
Live from Portland International Raceway, this is the NTT IndyCar Series. With complete coverage of today's practice, this is the IndyCar Radio Network.
Why don't you spend the day with us? We're going to cover the BitDial.com Grand Prix of Portland from start to finish. And it starts early, finishes kind of late all in all. Plenty of track activity throughout the course of the day, and we're going to cover every single lap for you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark James. Davey Hamilton, our driver analyst, joins us. And Davey, day one of practice. I think for the most part, out of that full a handful of, notable offs. And we mentioned that with the challenges of this bad, fast, flat racetrack, bottom line is this. If you are a driver that is comfortable in a very loose race car, chances are you're going to be fast here in Portland, and we assume that must be the mindset of Christian Lundgaard, Kyle Kirkwood, Alex Palou, Pato O'Ward, and Felix Rosenqvist. Those were the top 5 after the practice session yesterday.
There we go. I'm looking at Lundgaard as well as he was fast at Indianapolis Road Course. I mean, obviously he set on the pole there, challenge for the lead, super flat racetrack. It seems like that the flatter the racetrack and the more grip you need in the race car, that Lundgaard seems to be one to shine. So we'll definitely keep an eye on him. Obviously, the Arrow McLaren team fast yesterday with Pato and with Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist, we heard a lot of rumors that he will not be at that McLaren team next year, but he still wants to win a race. He's been fast early. He's been fast. He's had some poles, but hasn't pulled off that win that he really needs and wants. So this could be a good opportunity for him as well. Just needs to be there at the end of the race. And there's a lot of other contenders. You look back at that. Colton Hurd at one point, super fast around this racetrack. Thought this was his style racetrack. But he's back in 17th yesterday. Didn't have a good run whatsoever. And then, we're looking at Matt Ferrucci right now. It looks like he is struggling around here again. Bitnall cars, we've seen Ryan Hunter-Reay go off a few times, watching actually a replay with him. Went off twice yesterday. So a lot of action happened yesterday. No big shunts. Nothing got tore up. But today is when it counts. They got this 1-hour practice session this morning, Mark. This is going to be a real good indicator on where everybody's going to be since they had a chance to practice yesterday. They changed a lot of these cars to make sure to try to get them better. But then we'll really know this afternoon when qualifying happens.
Almost every one of the incidents that we saw the recap of from yesterday, Davey, and the ones that we witnessed live, it seemed like that we talked about again. We don't want to belabor a point, but a quote-unquote loose racetrack and the driver's ability to handle that. Almost every off that we saw, the car broke loose at the apex of the turn.
Yeah, that's right. Just lack of grip. Like I say, no banking. It's completely flap, and you try to get back on that gas. That's where they really want to. When you want to push that throttle down to get going again, it's breaking the tires loose, and that's exactly where you want to make sure that you have good grip, good exit grip, and that's what makes you faster on this place. Is just when the tires follow your foot and not spin. That's what you want.
Well, they've closed Lima, Ohio for the weekend, I think, because Alex Wolff, the pride and joy of Lima, is in Portland with us this weekend. He's taking a couple of races off. Happy to have him back with us in Portland. And we had a beautiful day yesterday. Alex, what say you about the conditions today?
Well, Mark, you always talk about the late, great Gary Lee referring to weather as Chamber of Commerce weather, and I think if the city of Portland would like to enter one in for a Chamber of Commerce weather here today, it would be the type of day. Ambient temperature is 67, track temperature is 74. Blue skies, but now the sun poking through some cloud cover that's just developed a little bit, and a gentle breeze blowing the tree branches around this picturesque facility. So some great conditions to start, which would be a busy and fast fast stay here at Portland International Raceway.
We know it is a busy time of the year for Alex with high school football coverage underway for him. We appreciate him taking time away from that to join us this weekend. He's here to help lighten the load a little bit for Ryan Marine, who had a very busy day yesterday. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Mark. Great to have Alex with us. I echo those sentiments, and great to be back here at the racetrack on this Saturday, getting started nice and early. Did want to give an update on Alex Palou and the 10 team as they go for their second championship here over the final 2 races of the season. They do it with some extra motivation. His longtime strategist, Barry Wanzer, recently made public his battle with skin cancer. He recently had to have surgery, and as a consequence, will not be with the team over the final 2 rounds of this 2023 season. Now, the team has drafted in Mike O'Gara, who's got plenty of experience in a strategist role, but that is an extra hurdle for Alex Palou to try and clear. The good news is he's got a healthy points lead here and could very well leave Portland as the champion-elect going into Laguna Seca, but I think we all want to send our best wishes to the Wanzer family and to Barry in particular as he battles skin cancer, and again will not be up on the timing box for Alex Palou over the final 2 races here in 2023.
An example of talent and professionalism, but as much as anything, Davey Hamilton, Barry Wanzer is one of the best people you could ever hope to encounter.
Yeah, great guy. You know, prayers go out for him and his family. I'm obviously a tough time for him, and you know, it looks really positive that they're going to win this championship, and him not being there to celebrate is going to be a bummer. But you know, hopefully everything's going good. They got, like Ryan said, they got capable people on that team, and got O'Gara back up on that booth, who knows how to do strategy as well. And so it'll be a good day for him, I'm sure. But thoughts go out to that family.
That name O'Gara has a pretty good history in motorsports too, I think, Dave.
Yeah, they do. They've been around a day or two, haven't they? They've had a lot of experience all over of all kinds of racing. And as a matter of fact, Kyle O'Gara, he was just running a Silver Crown car last week in St. Louis. So the O'Gara's from working on cars, crew chief and engineering, strategy and driving. They're all over the place.
Christian Lundgaard vaults right back to the top of timing and scoring. David Maluka's second quick. McLaughlin now Joseph Newgarden slots in at third quick. Scott McLaughlin, last year's winner, is now fourth quick. Rosenquick picks up where he left off. He is fifth quick. Then Yuri Vips, who's in the 30 car this weekend for Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing, sixth quick. Then Arenas VK, Herta, Grosjean. Davey, we've made much of the battle for that leader circle money and who all is involved in that, and there is some significance there as we see a quick off right now by Lundgaard. But Davey, let's face it, as much as anything, some of these teams that maybe haven't had the year that they would hoped, off-season momentum is buoyed a bit by good performances over the past couple of races, and there are many drivers, many teams, some drivers still looking to solidify their deals for next year. There's a lot going on just to prove this next couple of weeks for these drivers besides winning a championship.
Yeah, the silly season's strong, isn't it? I mean, we hear so many rumors. We know where a couple of the drivers have already landed, but there's still, probably a half a dozen that we don't know where they're going to end up. It's going to be musical chairs and trying to figure out what some of these teams are going to do as these next few weeks go on. I expect some announcements between now and Laguna Seca next week, and then after that, the next week's probably going to be really busy for us. But right now, it's business as usual. You come in here, you want to try to win this race. All efforts, no matter if you don't know your future with a team, you don't know who your driver is going to be as a team, you got to come here and do everything you can to try to win these last 2 races. So that's the most important thing right now.
I think it's interesting to note with the 2 drivers involved in the championship, and Scott Dixon and Alex Palou, it puts, I think, Ganassi Racing in an interesting position because, typically if you have one of your drivers battling it out for a championship against, say, a rival team, there are team orders there, and everybody's job is to do what they can to help win that championship for the team. But in this instance, I'm going to assume the only orders that have been given in terms of Scott Dixon and Alex Palou is just simply don't take each other out. Other than that, all bets are off, and each one of those guys, are going to chase the championship and do so 110%.
Yeah, it looks very positive that they're going to run first and second the championship. But you got to look at Scott Dixon. We talk about what does he have to do to win the championship, but we should also talk about what does he have to do to keep second place in the championship. Because there's drivers behind him. Pressure pressuring him as well to try to get that second place in the points championship. So he's got to look on both sides of him. I mean, I think Dixon's the only one that can beat Palou, but Dixon, like I say, needs to watch who's behind him too to make sure he makes no mistakes and tries to get that second place in the championship.
Nick Yeoman joins us for this session. As we mentioned, going to be a busy day for all of us. A busy day for the NTT IndyCar Series and a busy day for Indy Next, presented by Firestone. Nick, while certainly it's a two-horse race in the championship for the NTT IndyCar Series, still a couple of drivers mathematically eligible and still chasing a championship in that series.
Yeah, the front runner is certainly Christian Rasmussen, who's kind of got hot here towards the summer stretch of this schedule with 4 wins leading all drivers. Comes into this weekend, Mark, with a 50-point advantage over Hunter McElroy, as we see a lazy spin for Scott Dixon out of the racetrack. He'll do a 180 and spin that car back around. But really, we're looking at Rasmussen and McElroy as the two with the most realistic shot. There's still like 164 points up for grabs because there is a doubleheader at Laguna Seca. So 3 races, lots of points up for grabs. Jacob Abel and Nolan Siegel with an outside chance if those top 2 have a little bad luck. But we're really focusing in on Christian Rasmussen, who had a fabulous win last week at just outside of St. Louis at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Hunter McElroy trying to chase him down. The problem for McElroy is it's just been a lot of top 5s and not a lot of race wins. So we're excited to see those drivers out on track, Mark. They'll be contesting their second practice session following IndyCar, and then they'll go qualifying a little bit later this afternoon at Indy Next by Firestone.
Going to bring Ryan Marine into the conversation on pit road. And Ryan, as we mentioned, Yuri Vips, the 23-year-old 3-time Formula 2 race winner, is essentially in an audition role for Leon Letterman Lanigan Racing. Give folks a little more background on this talented young driver.
He certainly was someone that looked like he was poised for stardom over in Europe and was tabbed by Red Bull as one of its junior drivers, and he won a ton of races, especially at the F3 level before making it up to F2, where he had some success, like you pointed out, did win some races there, but ultimately his career stalled out when he used an unfortunate word, more than unfortunate, quite frankly, one that you simply cannot use while streaming an online gaming session, and that caused Red Bull to drop him right there and then, and that at that time caused his entire career to stall out. And from that point, he's kind of been looking for a way to resuscitate his career, and according to reports at least, he has been very proactive in seeking out sensitivity training to learn more about what he said and to also learn about American culture as he makes the shift from Europe over to the United States to make sure he doesn't have a similar issue again. And by all accounts, he's a pretty upstanding young man who made a pretty major mistake and paid the consequences, but has been now given a lifeline by Bobby Rahal and Mike Lanigan, as well as David Letterman, with a chance to audition here, over, like you said, over the final couple of races for RLL. And if you look at his resume, he's been a race winner at every level. He's had the chance to do a couple of tests in the IndyCar. The Rahal team has liked his speed there, and now we're going to see what he can do over the course of an IndyCar weekend. And guys, I have to say, P15 yesterday in his first competitive session in that car, really, really impressive yesterday, and I'm excited to see what he can do with this second chance.
Currently sitting at 13th in timing and scoring. He's right at the 1 minute mark at a 59.421. And I went from the segue, Davey, from Indy Next into the story about Vips being tabbed to, essentially audition to this car with the final 2 races. That, I think, it creates somewhat of a precarious position for those looking to move up from Indy Next, because it's been clear over the past couple of years that, certainly teams now in the NTT IndyCar Series aren't simply relying just on Indy Next to find those drivers to move up to the NTT IndyCar Series. We're seeing guys like McLaughlin and Palou and Lundgaard and others that haven't come up through that route come here and have a lot of success. So it's clear that team owners are scouring far and wide around this globe for talent for the NTT IndyCar Series.
Yeah, well, it's one thing for sure, Mark, that you look back in the history of IndyCar and where the drivers come from. They come from a lot of different areas. It doesn't have to be Indy Lights or the Road to Indy. I mean, that's a good avenue because they race with the IndyCar Series pretty much week in, week out, so all these owners can see what those divisions are doing and what they have to offer. And I think it's also a very good stepping stone out of Indy Lights into IndyCar. But there's a lot of different avenues. You know, we look at Scott McGlaughlin. A lot of these drivers, Canapino, they haven't even been in open wheel cars. They were in closed fender cars in the countries that they raced in. They had success. They come over here, hop in these cars, and so we're going to look at Bloomquist. You know, he's a sports car racer that's coming to IndyCar. It's usually the retired IndyCar drivers go into sports car, to be real honest with you. So, they come from a lot of different areas. They show that they have speed and talent. You don't have to. There's not just one avenue to get here, but maybe, I think the most common one is the Indy Light Series. Indy Next, I'm sorry.
To Pit Road and Alex Wolf.
And early in this practice session, we're starting to see some fine-tuning from some of the cars, also featuring some of the ones that have been towards the top of the speed charts, both yesterday and in the first 15 minutes of this session. Saw Kyle Kirkwood, who was second quick yesterday, and he was making a front spring change. They have the front cover off of that 27 Auto Nation Honda for Andretti Autosport. Also saw David Malukas on the podium last week at Worldwide Technology Raceway. He was sixth fastest yesterday afternoon in the first practice, and he was making a front spring change as well. And now we have the leading rookie contender Marcus Armstrong is in. They have a couple of springs at the ready. The rear cover is off of that 11 car right now, so they're working on the rear of that car. And looks like the same thing for his teammate and championship contender Scott Dixon in front of him in the PNC Bank Honda pit as they're making a rear spring change on the 9 car. So a lot of work going on trying to get these cars tuned in for qualifying later today and the race tomorrow.
1 hour window to get this 45-minute session in, and Davey, one of those interesting scenarios, and we've seen it. It kind of the pendulum swings back and forth in terms of the schedule. We go for a while, and we have the final warm-up on race day morning. But for the last couple of races, and including this race, after we go qualifying later today, the final warm-up for the NTT IndyCar Series comes your way at 5:15 Central Time, 8:15 Eastern tonight. Interesting that they've gone back to doing that final warm-up the night before the race.
Yeah, I think it's a situation, Mark, where we're on the West Coast now, and so with the time slot that we have for TV, actually, it's a very early race, and so I think the idea was if something was to happen to some of these teams that early in the morning, they probably wouldn't really have a good opportunity to fix their cars between the final warm-up and the race. So I think on the West Coast, we come out here, they choose to do the night before, just in case something is to go bad and get these teams a little more time to get prepared for race conditions in the final race.
Again, we're watching, kind of a track level view as they set up for turn number 9. And there's no question, Davey, that as this weekend progresses, drivers get too far out of that racing groove, they're going to pick up some stuff on those Firestone Firehawks that aren't going to make them any easier to handle.
Yeah, we see that turn 12 exit coming on this front straightaway, and it looks like the wall is all concrete and our asphalt all the way from the exit of that onto this drag strip down this long front straightaway. But obviously there's just a small area. If you barely get so close to that wall, that there must be some dirt there because it hits that, shoots up some dirt and some dust onto the racetrack. So that's that tells you how much racetrack they're using, because it looks like it's just a small little area, but that's how close to the walls these guys are getting.
Well, last year we saw a video yesterday and a replay of Colton Herta as he tackled turn number 1 and got a little bit too close and clipped the Armco and did some right front suspension damage. And I'll tell you what, it has not made him shy about taking that similar path through turn number 1.
Yeah, well, he just went through there just now, and you probably just seen that sideways through turn 1. And when he turned in, the back of that car stepped out. He went over that curbing sideways, slid it into turn 2, was able to make that corner. Still has a decent lap there, not great. Colton, as he's been so fast here in the past, and seems to be off pace. He's 21st quickest right now as we see him battling around this racetrack. A lot of sliding back in, sliding around, just not getting that grip we talked about that you need around Portland International Raceway.
King for a day, would you suggest maybe they level that off to the right of that particular curbing there, just to smooth that out a little bit?
In turn 1, my thing is you either put higher curbing as it gets closer to the wall so they will not use it. So it's definitely a hindrance to these cars, and it's going to mess up the balance of the car, or just get rid of the curbing completely. They're already running down there next to the wall. If they want them to run down the next wall, just get rid of that curbing and just make it an extra line. Maybe try to get some more side-by-side where there's less incidents down there. So one or the other, either add curbing and go in turn 1, or get rid of the curbing completely.
Well, I think what it boils down to more than anything else with these drivers, they figure out where they can and can't go pretty quickly. And a lot of times, Davey, they'll give us the They'll give us the width of a racetrack and say it's 60 feet wide. They're going to try to make it 61 or 62 feet wide where and when they can.
Yeah, that's right. They're going to use every opportunity they can to make the track as short as possible, to make the corners as straight as possible. And if you give them that opportunity, and that's sometimes you don't even realize that you build the track and you think, okay, this is good, this is where they're going to be, but they'll show you different. And so I think this is a situation down in turn 1 where they really need to look at that because what could happen is it causes more damage than good. It doesn't really slow them down because they're still going through that, over that curbing. Their left side tires, it's a right-hand corner, and their left side tires aren't even touching the curbing or barely. And if you look at the edge of the curbing, if they get it wrong, it could damage your tires, sidewall of the tire, it could damage the wheel. And another thing, it could pop your car in there like we seen Ryan Hunter-Reay yesterday. And if it's a lot of cars around, that could cause a big accident. So like I say, I think, that they need to address that turn 1, like say either bigger curbs all the way to the wall or eliminate completely, I think, are the two options.
Slide off for Kyle Kirkwood has him reporting back to pit road to the attention of his crew in his pit box. Okay, Davey, so Christian Lundgaard, after, again, a successful trip around the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this is very similar to it in the fact that it's very technical but very high speed, but more importantly, it's flat. Little to no elevation changes. And so then you've got the mastery of Joseph Newgarden on ovals, and then you've got a guy like Kyle Kirkwood who seems to be most comfortable on street courses. Just interesting to watch this develop as we have certain drivers who prefer certain types of racetracks and they seem to excel on them.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely correct. They do excel. I mean, I think Lundgaard, we kind of just now figuring out that it seems like the flatter, high speed, high momentum corners seem to fall into his, best tracks. And then Rosenqvist, he's been kind of fast everywhere, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we've seen him, he's always towards the top of the timing charts in P2 right now. How about Graham Rahal, that Lundgaard's teammate? Seems like they're getting a better handle on that team in general, and Graham seems, he's pretty good everywhere. We've seen him be able to win. I think his first race win was on a street course in St. Petersburg, Florida. Yep, and then you got Malukas, who, we know that he's switching rides this year. Grosjean, who don't know where he's going to end up. We know he's not going to be the Andretti, but you're right. I think it's a situation where some drivers, and let's go back to Newgarden that you just mentioned. Man, domination on the ovals this year until the last one. Had the opportunity to win all the ovals this year, but then what happens? He gets up in the marbles himself, leads a lot of that race at St. Louis last weekend, gets up in the marbles, makes contact with the wall towards the end of the race. Just not Newgarden in form, to be honest with you. Just made that slight mistake, but put him out of contention to be the first guy to ever win sweep the ovals in one season.
I know dirt was never your thing. You preferred pavement and raced on that the overwhelming majority of your career. So in terms of pavement tracks, did you prefer those that were banked? Did you prefer the 3/4 to a mile? Did you prefer the shorter paved tracks? What?
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm a pavement guy, and I've ran dirt, but back when we were doing it, I could run 3-4 times a week on pavement, so I didn't really give the dirt a real opportunity. Did okay on it, but I like the big fat. I liked St. Louis last week. We were going to race the Silver Crown car, tested it, felt good. I love Phoenix International Raceway, which is 1 mile. Milwaukee, Richmond, those bigger tracks. Even like Pikes Peak. Those mile tracks, I think those are my favorite. But man, you can't give up loving just a short bull ring 1/4 mile. There was a track in Beacon Hill, was called, in Pueblo, Colorado. A little 1/4 mile ran there in 9.8 seconds or something.
Wow.
Those are fun as well because you got 20 cars out there racing, just like the big tracks. So love them all. I think it's a different driver skill set at all of them, but was fortunate enough to be able to drive about any kind of short track car and win on all different kind of tracks. So I definitely loved it.
9 seconds, you say. It takes me that long to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, no, it was plenty fast, and I'll never forget this. The guy Scotty Backman, who was a local there, and they said, "Hey, it's going to be like a 30-lap race." I go, 30 laps? Let's make this 100 or something. I mean, 30 laps isn't going to. I think it was 50, and I told him to make it 100 actually. And I go, it's going to be over so fast, we don't know. But let me tell you what, you don't have a chance to breathe around that track. And at 50 laps, I got that thing more tired than running the Indy 500. I swear, you got to work hard. So, like I say, every different kind of racetrack brings different kind of challenges, and You just got to be prepared for it. And let me tell you, all these drivers could win anywhere, honestly. I know that some of them aren't that comfortable in ovals yet, but with the teams how good these teams are, anybody could win at any time. I think we can see that week in, week out.
Newcomers to the top of timing and scoring, Joseph Newgarden at 58.270. Graham Rahal the second quick. He was P1, but momentarily until Joseph Newgarden cleared the timing and scoring loop. Graham at a 58.305. Then his teammate Christian Lundgaard at 58.473. Felix Rosenqvist is fourth. David Malukas is fifth. Grosjean, Rossi, VK, Dixon, and Armstrong through 10th. Alex Palou is 11th quick. Callum Ilott is 12th. Award, Peterson, McLaughlin through 15th. Then Power, Kirkwood, Canapino, Erickson, and Ferrucci. Stingray Robb, Yuri Vips, 22nd. 23rd is Herta. 24th, Hunter Ray. 25th, Blomqvist. 26th, Devlin DeFrancesco. And 27th is Helio Castro Neves. And again, Felix Rosenqvist, he's been fast all weekend. Fifth quick after the session yesterday, Ryan, which included a trip around on the primary and the alternates. Primaries only today, and he's currently fourth quick.
The interesting thing, too, talking to Billy Vincent, who's on the radio with Felix as the strategist, he said that Felix isn't totally happy with the race car just yet, and yet they're still exhibiting top 5 speed, so he found that to be pretty encouraging, and they're making some pretty significant changes over the course of this practice. Felix was just out running quite a few laps, and now they've come in, they've made damper changes front and rear on that machine, and they're just buttoning those up right now, and about to send the Swede back out onto the racetrack on some scuffed tires to see how those changes affect the race car. But it's interesting, this is a team that is going through some change. It's been pretty well reported that Felix Rosenqvist is in his final 2 races for the Arrow McLaren team. Looks like he'll be moving on. The hot rumor is possibly to Meyer Shank Racing to pair with Tom Blomqvist next year. But then also Billy Vincent, who I mentioned earlier, these are his final couple of races, at least as a full-time employee for Arrow McLaren. He's going to be off pursuing his karting business, which has really been picking up here in recent years. So this is a package that maybe hasn't produced the wins, but in recent seasons at least, Felix Rosenqvist has been a more consistent threat for poles and top 5s, but it's all coming to an end here next week at Laguna Seca.
I know Rob Houghton could tell us more, but Ryan, you're aware of it because you mentioned it, Billy Vincent. If you want to have a conversation with a guy that's passionate about all forms of motorsports, but especially karting, Billy Vincent is a good guy to sit down and have a chat with.
No, there's no doubt about it, and that's really, I think, his big passion, which is part of the reason he's electing to step aside at least full-time out of the NTT IndyCar Series. And he has said publicly that, yeah, I'd be interested in maybe running a one-off at Indy or something to that nature. But his karting program has been really, really successful. And actually, it's funny you bring it up. Just a couple weeks ago, I was able to put my son in a go-kart for the first time down at Whiteland, and Billy Vincent just happened to walk up there, and he was so great. Spent some time talking to Rupert in his kart, talking to him about weight transfer and things like this. I don't know how much of it sunk in, but he didn't have to do that, and he did, and you could tell his passion is helping kids discover this sport and fall in love with the sport like so many of us did when we were younger.
So, Davey, are you going to sit down after we get off the air and have a chat with Ryan about the costs involved in going down this rabbit hole?
Let me show you my budget. Yeah, You know, it looks good at a go-kart level, especially as a kid in the kid karts. But boy, oh boy, it definitely gets a little more expensive from there. But yeah, well, we'll have to have a talk.
All right, you got it, Davey.
You can buy that kid a very expensive set of golf clubs and still come out money ahead, Ryan. So
Yeah,
for
right.
sure. Scott McLaughlin has now gone to P1. It's interesting, Nick Yeoman, to watch this timing and scoring loop roll over now as we get closer to the end of this final practice session. We see some guys that were kind of mired down 15, 16, 17 yesterday. They starting to flex some muscle, albeit on the primaries.
Yeah, but it's the guys you would expect to make those jumps into practice number 2, right? It's the Team Penske teammates of McLaughlin and Newgarden who have gone to P1 and P2. Continue to be impressed with how strong that Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan's been this weekend. They've got 2 cars there sitting 3rd and 4th with Graham Rahal and Christian Lundgaard. Yuri Vips has flirted with the top 15. In fact, he just bumped up to 11th quick. So all 3 of those cars having a good run. And we get to that part of the season, Mark, where for a lot of these guys without race wins, this is the time to get it done. There are 4 names that come to mind, Mark, and I'm interested which one stands out to you. With 2 races to go, Will Power, Colton Herta, Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, none of those drivers have wins in 2022. And, I don't know what's the most surprising one on that list, but they've only got 2 opportunities to get it done. So these practice sessions are very, very valuable.
Power doesn't surprise me because he is typically consistent. I mean, he won a championship last year with 1 race. I think Rossi not having a win with Errol McLaren is a surprise. I think people expected him to be a championship contender, and he did. But I think Pato probably is the biggest surprise to me. And there have been some opportunities, especially early on in the season, where he was in contention and sometimes of his own doing. Things did not work out well for him. I gotta believe that despite the fact that he's 17th now, you don't know what he's working on, but after the day that he had yesterday and just the pace that he's showing in practice this weekend, I would say of those that you mentioned, I would put the favorite label on probably him or Rossi in terms of getting a win here this weekend. Want to go to pit road, check in with Alex Wolf, who has an update on Marcus Ericsson.
And Marcus Ericsson brought the Husky Ice Spritz Honda in, the number 8. And I thought they were maybe going to make a front spring change, as they had a couple of those on the toolbox right by the pit wall. But they instead just gave the car a once-over, put on a sticker set of the primary black Firestone Firehawk tires, and sent the 8 car back out as Marcus Ericsson in his final 2 races with Chip Ganassi Racing before moving to Andretti Autosport next year. Yuri Vips is in the pits right now. Firestone engineers looking at those tires. Looks like they're going to send him out on scuff tires. They gave that car a look-see with the rear cover off, and he's getting ready to go back out. Same sort of situation for his teammate Christian Lundgaard a little bit earlier, and Tom Blomqvist was also coming to the attention of the 60 team a little bit earlier before he headed back out to Portland International Raceway. So in these waning moments, things getting really busy here on the pit lane as teams are going on different strategies, new tires versus old tires back onto the speedway here in Portland.
Good stuff, guys. We appreciate the insight and the input and all your work on pit road, and we'll do so throughout the course of the weekend for sure. So, Davey, I know we talk about places like Iowa and even Worldwide Technology Raceway, that when it comes to setup and your mindset over the course of a run, you're concerned about that right rear or maybe the left rear, whatever the case may be, as it pertains to the oval and what the banking's like. But here, as we see another spin, I believe that's Roman Grosjean who's trying to get it going back in the right direction. Now we'll double check that. Stingray Rob, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Stingray Rob, yeah. So, Davey, let's talk about what you need in terms of striking a balance here, which I'm assuming that's the goal, is to find a balanced race car.
Yeah, so what I went and talked to a few of the teams yesterday morning, Mark, and I asked them, I go, wow, for this racetrack, how are you guys setting up in it? And right then they were setting up everything square. For example, the same camber and casters on both right and left, same weight on right and left. Everything was like 50%, and that was their starting point. But when you go to a road course where there's, majority right-hand corners and very few left-hand corners, sometimes these teams put a little tilt in the car. Sometimes they put a little crossweight in the car to help turn on those left-handers, or I'm sorry, the right-handers, I mean, there's so many of them. And so it changes from that, but they all start just square on the car. Now, with the oval, you would do just... you wouldn't do that. You would have more right front weight to give a little grip going through those corners to help turn, which also puts lefter weight in the car as well, and to get grip coming off the corner. So, but here they get them as square as they can, get the ride heights equal, but I assure you they'll change if they think there's an advantage to give up some speed in the right-handers, the left-handers to be fast in the right-handers.
Oh, well, I know this series is, as far as I'm concerned, the front runner in terms of fan access and the ability to get to the paddock, get up close and personal with the cars, and I would challenge people, obviously not time to do it this year, but if you go to multiple races next year, Davey, don't you really, as a fan, to learn a little more about the car, the setup and everything, kind of owe it to yourself that if you get that paddock access or get back in the garage area, whatever the case may be, stand to the very front of the car and stand back about 3 or 4 feet or so and compare if you go to an oval and to a road course, just the look of that car, everything from the front wings all the way to the rear wings. Yeah, that's right. Wings are different, wing angles, builds, and then as you look straight onto a car for the road and street courses, you'll see the front tires. That's the easiest way to look at it. And the tops of the tires are facing each other. The bottom of the tires are wider than the top because they're angled in. But if you go to the road course, they're all angled to the left. They're the same angle. But that, when you get up to speed, those tires will be flat. And so you're getting 100% grip on that racetrack. So, yeah, definitely a big difference between street, road, and courses and the ovals. So, yeah, you kind of learn that as we go. It's kind of second nature. We don't think about it a lot, but for a fan to come in and just try to see the differences of what they do, that's the best way to go about it. Now, I know a lot of these teams, majority of them have backup cars, and when you get into a situation like they were at Gateway last week on an oval, and then they come here to Portland, many of them had that Portland car probably already prepared, maybe sitting on the hauler, but for those that may have felt like that they wanted to use that car, for that turnaround time to take it from an oval setup to a road and street course setup, how long does that process typically take a race team? Well, so that's interesting because if obviously last week we just ran at Worldwide Technology Speedway in St. Louis, and a lot of the teams, the race finished, they started working on their cars to get it turned around from that oval setup to the road course setup. They got some of it done that night. Most of the teams came back in early that next morning and finished it that Monday morning about noon, and then the trucks got on the road and headed here to Portland. So it's a good day job basically to turn the car around with your crew. Then they all trust
me, for you and I to do a mark, it's a week or so. But for these crew guys that know what they're doing, it's a day to get everything turned around, to get all the suspension pieces replaced from ovals to street roads and get the aero package proper. So they do it fairly quickly.
Well, I think it would probably take you a little less time for me. After all, you build a backward pickup truck.
Well, yeah, that didn't take a lot of engineering, though. Well, I guess it actually did take a lot of engineering to think about it, but yeah, that was fun. That took a long time as well.
So, Nick Yeoman, let's again visit briefly about the Indy Next presented by Firestone. I think if Christian Rasmussen is able to finish the deal and close out the championship, be it this week or next week, whatever the case may be, I think he's probably worked about as hard to win a championship as any driver in recent memory. And I think last weekend's race at Worldwide Technology Raceway kind of mirrored his season, to where he started off strong, and then he had some challenges, namely Nolan Siegel took advantage of a couple of bobbles by Rasmussen at about the midway point of the season, and Siegel had the points lead, albeit briefly, and then all of a sudden Rasmussen comes storming back. So his championship season, I think last week was kind of indicative of what kind of season it's been, because the race and that race and this season for him were very similar.
Yeah, unlike the IndyCar championship, where really it's been Alex Palou, really from the get-go, looking like the guy to beat. In Indy Next, we've kind of watched the different drivers come to the top and assert themselves as the favorite. Rasmussen was kind of that guy in the first couple of races as we were figuring some things out, and then Nolan Siegel hit his stride in the midway point of the season and took over the points lead and looked like the guy that was maybe going to charge his way to a surprise championship. But I think you're right. I mean, the way he dealt with a little bit of adversity, dealing with the race conditions changing and catching lap traffic and dealing with that aerodynamic wash at Worldwide Technology Raceway, it was really impressive the way he kind of bounced back in the second half of that race. And again, enters this weekend with a 50-point lead, so has a chance to extend that lead. Still a lot of points up for grabs. Hunter McElroy is within 50, so there's a chance. McElroy's been pretty good at these couple racetracks in the past as well. But, yeah, it's been you flat out have to earn it in Indy Next. We've seen it time and time again because there's a lot of talented drivers. It's a larger field than we've seen in recent years, with sometimes 17, 18, 19 cars on a given weekend. So it is a tough championship to win, and this year there's no doubt that Christian Rasmussen, if he can hold off McElroy and Abel and Siegel over the final three races, can most certainly said that he earned it. And with that comes a scholarship prize where he will be able to take a significant amount of money to IndyCar owners to give him an opportunity to propel him to the IndyCar Series like we've seen from so many drivers, Mark, over the years.
Under 10 minutes to go in the session now, and last year's winner, Scott McLaughlin, fast again this year, at least in this session. He's gone to P1. His teammate Joseph Newgarden is second. Graham Rahal still rolls around in third. Palou and Armstrong the top five. Lundgaard, Award, Rosenquist, Power, and Ericsson the top 10. So all three Penske cars in the top 10. Herta's 11th, Malukas is 12th, Grosjean 13th, Alexander Rossi is 14th, Rinus VeeKay is 15th. Devlin DiFrancesco, Yuri Vips, 16th, 17th, 18th, Dixon, 19th, Ilott. 20th, Kirkwood, 21st, Peterson, 22nd, Canapino, 23rd, Santino Ferrucci, 24th, Steve Ray Robb, Tom Blomqvist is 25th, Elio Castroneves is 26th, and Ryan Hunter-Reay is 27th. And Davey, we continue to watch drivers attack the right of that curbing next to that Armco in turn number one. When you see Owen Snyder roaming around back in the paddock, telling him he probably shouldn't have strayed too far away from that Dallara trailer, because there may be some phone calls made.
Yeah, there could be some nose wings, some A-arms and suspension, maybe hubs and wheels that could be used up if they hit that inside barrier like we've seen Colton Herta do last year. And I tell you, it's just hard on the cars through there, and I'm surprised that they continue to let them do that. But I guess, it's a huge bump. I mean, if you don't hit it just right, it gets all four tires off the ground. It's pretty brutal through there, pretty rough on these cars. But yeah, like I say, Dallara's probably enjoying it because I think they have opportunity to sell some parts.
Interesting to note, Davey, about the suspensions of these cars, especially the front suspension, which is the one that obviously is most exposed. We have seen I guess on enough to bend and break, or maybe it comes loose a little bit later and finally gives after maybe having a stress fracture in it due to that contact. But yet, here they are attacking a far different portion of the racetrack where it actually drops down and then comes back up. I think, while certainly they're delicate, they're also incredibly strong pieces of these cars.
Yeah, they really are. It's amazing how much downforce that they withstand and how much downforce and G-force these cars generate, and it has to go through that suspension. So they are very, very strong. But you hit them, they do everything strong has to have a weak portion to it to make it so it's safe for the driver as well to crumble in case you get in an accident and it doesn't puncture the tub and so forth. So they're made out of aero tubing. It's not just a piece of round tubing. It's shaped somewhat like an airplane wing, so it's round, bigger in the front than it is in the back. Goes to a point, and that's where it creates strength vertically. But then when you try to hit it horizontally on top, that's where they're fairly weak. So these designers, they're amazing, and Dallara has Italy working on not just our IndyCar program, but on multiple different kind of race cars, and they know what it takes to make it sure it gets through the air properly, but they also know they make it strong but weak when it needs to be.
Ever-evolving technology has drastically changed the look and the feel and the functions of the steering wheel in that cockpit. We get a lot of looks at it. We've all been back in the paddock and had an opportunity to be up close and personal, take a look. They do have the ability to set all those things up with driver preferences, and probably no two are exactly alike. I'm curious, though, going back to 96, 97, 98, and 99, how do these steering wheels differ from the ones that you had in your cars?
Yeah, for one, I mean, the biggest difference of them right now, we had a lot of telemetry on there, a lot of buttons, be able to change fuel mixtures, things like that. But now the clutch is on the wheel, the shifting's on the wheel. We didn't have paddle shifters. We had foot clutches, not hand clutches. And so that's a huge difference just right there on what's on that steering wheel compared to what we had. We still had the shift lights, and it looks to me like, that they just a little more, they're obviously more technologically advanced just because of the time. But there's a few more knobs. We had buttons for our pit speed limiter. We had rev limiter buttons, a lot of different things. But I think the biggest thing, Mark, is having paddle shift and the clutch on the steering wheel.
Refresh my memory. You were away for 7 years while you recovered from your injuries. When you got back in the race car, had we switched to paddle shifting by that point?
Yes, we did. Yeah, that was one of the things I had to, really get used to, is that paddle shift, and it was pretty interesting. It came natural, but it takes you a minute. For example, the hardest thing, once I was on a racetrack, I really liked that paddle shift and really got used to, when to go up, when to go down on the shifting. Use your hands other than just one hand on the lever. But every time I went to leave pit lane was the hardest part. I'd always reach down to grab that shift lever, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I thought, oh yeah, that's right, it's on the steering wheel. So that was the hardest part to get used to, but man, it really is a pleasure to drive. Much easier for the drivers, I'll be honest with you. You look at some of the old videos and in cars where we had to take our hand off the wheel to shift in the middle of corners and stuff. Much more of a challenge back then, but it sure makes it ezy now with the paddle shift.
Well, given the injuries that you suffered, was it simply easier to do it? Would it have been tougher to do with the injuries that you suffered to your feet?
Yeah, no question about it. The less I had to use my feet, the better off I was. And the thing that kept me from, I really, on my return, had just to stick to ovals, Mark, is some fused ankles and some rods and pins in my legs. It was when I went and tested on a road course, actually. It wasn't a street course, a road course. Just the brake pressure that you have to use, because these cars are able to take the corner so much quicker than when I was doing it originally. And it was just hard for me, that much brake pressure for a whole race. Felt good, felt like I could do it. But the next day, I was paying for it. So I thought, we use way less brake on ovals. Just stick to the ovals and finish it off there. Yeah.
3.5 minute mark, and Nick Hellman, we just saw a spin by Alexander Rossi. It looked like he did it on purpose.
I mean, that was like something straight out of Fast and Furious. He got the right sides off the racetrack, spun, did a complete 360, grabbed a gear, and just head right back down the back straightaway, full song. So that was very nicely done. Quick hands, lets it spin, recovers, and like I said, jumps right back on the throttle and continues on. He's going to lose a couple seconds. They're going to take that car to pit lane, but that was nicely done by Mr. Rossi.
Picked off a signboard in the process, and I believe it was here a year ago. Was it Christian Lundgaard who picked up one of those and drug it around with him for about a lap or so? And he was in contention at that point, too, for a top 10, I think. But, yeah, that was like dragging a parachute around for a while, if I remember right. So, 2 minutes, 30 seconds left, and we see Scott McLaughlin continues P1. And again, last year's race winner, his teammate Joseph Newgarden is second quick. Scott Dixon has jumped up the third. Graham Rahal's been in the top 5 consistently for the session. Alex Palou is right there. Armstrong is 6th quick. Lundgaard is 7th quick. Pato Award, Felix Rosenquist, Alexander Rossi, the top 10. And by the way, we should give you the fast time by Scott McLaughlin, 58.152, a 58.270 for Newgarden. Dixon clocking in at a 58.278. Now past the top 10, Will Power 11th. Marcus Ericsson is 12th. Colton Herta is 13th. David Malukas is 14th. Rinus VK is 15th. Roman Grosjean is 16th. Kyle Kirkwood 17th. Devlin DeFrancesco is 8th. Yuri Vips 19th. 20th Eilert. 21st Hunter Ray Peterson 22nd. 23rd quick is Canapino. Santino Ferrucci 24th. Stingray Rob, Tom Blomqvist, and Elio Castroneves in the 27 cars. And Davey, it appears as though that things are not going swimmingly for Meyer Shank as their cars are currently 26th and 27th.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up there and seen them at the bottom of the chart, 26th and 27th. Bloomquist and Castroneves, two totally different, one young, one elder driver. I mean, finished up his final full-time season, being the 4-time winner, Elio Castroneves. These guys know how to drive a race car. That just tells me their cars are way off pace right now. And then you got Foyt in 22nd, and with Peterson, and 24th with Ferrucci. Just not good. Just not good.
I'll tell you, while Ryan Hunter-Ray is struggling to find speed at 21st quick, the same cannot be said of Rinus VK, Davey, with a minute to go. He's currently 6th quick.
He's currently 6th quick. Really good, VK, and his teammate, as you said.
Well, the session is over, as you know, and unfortunately we had a bit of an issue during the broadcast with the trackside radio. Apologies for that, but it is Scott McLaughlin from Newgarden and Dixon, the top 3 here in practice 2. We'll be back for qualifying at 8:30 p.m. British Summer Time. Join us for that here on Grid Network and on JB Motorsports and USON. Thanks for your company. We'll see you later for qualifying. Bye-bye.